Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Creating Engagement Moments that Accelerate Your Trail Network. My name is Mary Ellen Kuntz. I lead the collaborative here at Rails to Trails Conservancy, and I'm joined by my colleague, Heather Irish, our Director of Communications, who will be today's moderator. Today's webinar is hosted by Rails to Trails Conservancy's TrailNation Collaborative. The TrailNation Collaborative is a nationwide peer learning community that brings together advocates, leaders, and professionals from across disciplines to work together to establish and accelerate connected trail and active transportation networks across the country. To date, we have over 7,000 people signed up for the collaborative. The collaborative provides proven tools, methods, and resources, including the TrailNation Playbook. Combined with RTC's expertise and that of you, our network of partners across the country, we come together to find solutions to challenges and barriers, working to accelerate the development of connected trail systems in all of our communities. This opportunity is free and open to all. We welcome professionals and advocates in the trail and active transportation community, as well as in adjacent fields. Next slide, please. This is just our second session in the TrailNation Playbook in Action webinar series that we will revisit throughout the year. The TrailNation Playbook is an online resource and guide for creating multi-use trail networks built on the lessons learned alongside our partners in more than a decade of TrailNation projects. Many of you know that the process for developing a single trail, let alone a trail network, isn't linear, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach that can be easily replicated. While different communities and regions might have to take a different approach based on their unique circumstances, we're seeing these integrated elements as core to success. The playbook curates case studies, effective practices, and tools as a resource to trail planners, municipalities, states, and regions that are seeking to advance their own trail network projects. Next slide, please. Today's session focuses on the engagement strategies central to developing your trail network. We're thrilled to be joined by three panelists who have developed innovative engagement moments in their own communities. First is Dr. Nia Reed-Jones, who serves as the President and Executive Director of Black People Ride Bikes here in Baltimore, Maryland. Next is Clay Carmichael, President Pro Temp of Selma City Council in Alabama, as well as the co-founder of both Selma Cycles and the Black Belt Benefit Group. Finally, Elaine Price is joining us from the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission in Ohio, where she serves as the Planning Initiative Specialist for Green Space. I'm excited to hear the stories that this great group will share with us today.
Before our panelists share engagement best practices, let's dive into why engagement is critical to building momentum for your trail networks. Next slide, yes. Engagement is fundamental to trail network planning because it happens at every stage of your project and with your many internal and external audiences. Simply put, community engagement is a process intended to give those who are affected by an issue a say in the decision-making around it. Community engagement matters because you are planning for the future of your place. Next. I recommend taking a photo or a screenshot of this slide because you might actually need it in the future as you start planning your event. So with community engagement, your audiences really are everything. So before you create an event, you want to make sure your engagement opportunities drive you toward your goals and connect you with the audiences that you want to reach. These questions will help you and your team identify your audiences and get clear on the vision of success. Once you have that information, you can brainstorm the opportunities that are available to leverage your project locally, regionally, and nationally. And one of the most effective engagement techniques, it really occurs in a high trust environment. So as you work with your team, it's really important to be respectful, fair, caring, authentic, consistent, and transparent at every stage of the process. And ask yourself, where can you pause, listen, and learn from the audience we're building trust with? Next slide. I really want to hear from you all as to why you're here today. So I'd love if you can, in the chat, respond to why is it important to you to create opportunities that engage your community around the trail network you're pursuing. And I'll give a little bit of time to see what is popping up. So as you mull that over, I'm going to move on to the next slide, and I'd love to hear your conversation in the chat. So let's dive in a little bit deeper on understanding some of these moments that you can leverage to create engagement opportunities for your trail network. We're going to look at 3 of them today, and that being moments to engage, moments to amplify, and moments to advocate. But first, let's look at what's happening nationally. Right now, we're living in an exciting moment that's impacting the nation's trail and active transportation networks. Next slide. Thanks to decades of hard-fought advocacy for federal and state and local funding, we're now facing a once-in-a-generation moment for trail networks across the country. It's clear that people really want trail networks and that many places are ready to meet that demand. And with the recent passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law, alongside other major federal, state, and local legislative wins, there's now unprecedented funding to accelerate the pace of trail development across the country. So that's what we're doing here with engagement. We need to capture that moment, which is essential to the nation and to this building this essential infrastructure. And that's what engagement really helps us all do nationally, locally, regionally. It helps build that momentum for trail networks. Next slide. So let's take a look at some of the examples of the 3 types of engagement moments that you can consider when you're brainstorming opportunities for your community. Moments of engagement can be events that interest new and exciting audiences and really encourage them to experience the trails. We know that when people go out on the trail and experience it themselves with their community, that they feel that connection that trails have on their quality of life and throughout their neighborhood. Here's an example in Washington, D.C. The Washington Area Bicycle Association teamed up with the DC Trail Rangers and a local yoga instructor to offer a multi-sensory walking tour on Earth Day. The event started with a yoga practice and a walk with a meditation along the region's trail network. And this is really a great example of how you can use a national day like Earth Day and tap into community ambassadors like yoga instructors who will attract new audiences to explore the health and wellness benefits of your trail network. Next slide. Another way to engage people is to really raise the visibility of your project among your community and new audiences. Raising awareness of your trail network project really is critical to building momentum and interest for your trail vision. One way you can raise awareness is being in the areas that potential trail users frequent. So ask yourself, how can you bring the trails to them? So one example of that is last year, RTC teamed up with iHeartRadio to hold 3 events along trails across the country in Miami, Chicago, and Philadelphia. And partnering with this broadcast channel, we really tapped into their network, their listeners. For an example, in Philadelphia, a well-loved iHeart DJ named Patty Jackson is a passionate advocate of the network there. And she spoke so passionately about the trails in her broadcast sound bites. And that went out to audiences and it advertised a summer festival along the trail, which was held by local partners. So really creating that engagement opportunity on the trail. Now, fans of Patty lined up to meet her on the day, and actually one 9-year-old girl who had never been to this particular trail or had either heard about the trail was actually in awe meeting one of her idols. This connection to the trail was made thanks to reaching other ambassadors and broadcasters in the community. Next slide. And then we have a moment to advocate. For example, in California, the Bay Area Trails Collaborative is a group of more than 50 organizations, agencies, and businesses chaired by RTC. They oversaw bikeable studies that analyzed how close people would live to the developing 2,600 plus mile regional trail network when it was complete. The information helped shape a press release announcing their new interactive map, and it made the appeal for more funding for trails in the area at a strategic time when the California governor had released his draft budget, including a large surplus. With this fresh messaging and reintroduction of the network to press, the collaborative then worked with partners across the state to advocate for more state funding for trails, encouraging their audiences to send a pre-filled email to their legislator. And they wrote an op-ed, as you see in the example there, where to a publication that was widely read by state legislators to encourage them to raise the budget for trails. Thanks to this advocacy push through a wide range of partners across the state, California approved a record-breaking $1.02 billion for walking, biking, and trail projects last year. Next slide. So I've seen some exciting chat happening from the last prompt, and I really wanted to hear more from you all as well. So as you've heard a little bit more about some examples of opportunity moments, both nationally and also, as you're considering ways to amplify and engage and advocate, what are some opportunities you see nationally, regionally, locally that you want to pursue in your community? If you can put that into the chat, that would help. It's a great way to kind of share some insights with others to really kind of get those brainstorming happening. I love, somebody saying, love the idea of bringing in a local musician, an artist, art walks, bike to school. Yeah, keep them coming because this is a great way to brainstorm with each other. All right, let's move to the next slide. But yes, please do continue to share in the chat because this is a great way to learn from each other. So now that you have a little bit more information about engagement opportunities, let's hear from today's panelists. I want to introduce Dr. Nia Reed-Jones. She's going to give a brief intro on an annual event that she leads in Baltimore neighborhoods to engage residents. Nia, off to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm super excited to talk about Rails to Trails and the things that you can do within your community. So here in Baltimore, I lead a event called the Cyclovia, and basically this was kind of brought upon with a collaboration with Rails to Trails here in Baltimore. So we wanted to come up with an event that, first of all, brought attention to a trail here in Baltimore called the Gwynns Falls Trail. It's one of the longer trails within Baltimore, but sadly, a lot of people actually don't know about the trail or its existence. So, in a way to celebrate Open the Trails Day, we said that we wanted to start the Cyclovia as a way to not only start the spring cycling season here in Baltimore, but also Open the Trails Day, and also to bring attention to a project here called the Baltimore Greenway Project. And the location of this event is in Carroll Park, and Carroll Park is in Southwest Baltimore, and Carroll Park starts the trailhead of Gwynns Falls Trail. So we thought that it was a great place to actually have the event. So there's a bike ride associated with it. And throughout the day, what was cool is people just naturally started riding through the park on bikes and different things. So there's all sorts of, activities that are involved. Not only riding the trail or bringing forth the Gwynns Falls Trail, but we also had a virtual bike ride there for people to kind of ride a bike and play a video game at the same time. So you feel like you're literally riding in France or you're riding in Italy. along that. So you'll see the sign where it says virtual bike ride. We had all sorts of, we had a bike rodeo for kids. So I have a soft spot for children and bikes and everything with all the work that we do with the kids. So we did different sort of obstacles for them to get through. And as you all know, kids kind of have short attention spans. So we also had, some other, bubbles, games, chalk art, all types of different things. And we also, in this picture that's on the screen now, this is Milt, one of our founding board members, and he's like the ultimate mountain biker. You'd be shocked the amount of miles that he gets in a year. But this is just a picture. They're talking about how you can fix your bike, and I think he was explaining something about a derailleur in this picture. But it was such a nice conversation. We had to just get it reflected. But also we had another group here in Baltimore, Bike More, and they had their mobile bike shop. So we also had that there this year. These pictures are from actually this year. And this was some of the pictures taken along the Gwynns Falls Trail. And we took this ride to, bring attention to the trail, but also to allow people to kind of adventure, because it's really nice. A lot of people don't get to see this part of Baltimore. A lot of people think Baltimore is the inner harbor, but Baltimore actually has a lot to offer as far as greenery and historical sites around the trail. So I think we did about a 4-mile trail, a 4-mile ride this day. And I timed it so perfectly that we just missed the rain. So we were able to, have this day, but about 3 o'clock, it was a downpour. So I timed it perfectly for us to finish this ride. So I was super excited about that on that day. I think this is actually a picture from our very first cyclovia. Great time. The gentleman in the back, his name is Ethan. He actually led the ride. And we did Gwynns Falls trails and a couple of other trails that are adjacent or connect to the trail. And another trail I think that we went on this year was through Middle Branch Park. That's also in Southwest Baltimore.
Thank you so much, Mia, for that great background on Cyclovia. I can't wait to hear about the 3rd annual Cyclovia that's going to happen next year. So excited to hear more. I did want to move on to our second panelist. We're going to hear from Clay Carmichael on how Selma partners are coming together to raise awareness of the importance of bike lanes in the city. So Clay, on to you. Oh, Clay, I think you're on mute.
You might have to start over a little bit for us.
That would help, wouldn't it? So we decided about 4 weeks in advance to start this Celebrate Trails Day, and just off the cuff, just decided that we wanted to kind of get some cyclists together and ride bikes to kind of bring awareness and show that we needed some bike lanes and things in the. And we've been working with the Conservation Fund down here trying to pinpoint some civil rights sites in Selma and across the Black Belt. And we figured a good way that we could connect those is with bicycles. So we decided to put on a little ride, and we kind of went through. One of the purposes was to connect civil rights sites to the historic districts. Surprisingly here, the civil rights sites are not within the historic districts, and there's kind of some separation in neighborhoods there. So we wanted to connect those neighborhoods, and so we did that with a bike ride. And I think about, I don't know, 10 or 12 people showed up, and we were a little bit worried about the traffic because we've got a 4-lane US highway running straight through the center of town. So we had police support, and ended up, we didn't even really need them. It was it was real easy ride. As you can see here, we created a slow ride to not try to intimidate anybody with our first ride. We wanted to make sure people understood it was slow, it was easy. We wanted to make some stops along the way, see some civil rights sites. So we actually created 2 rides within one. One of them was a 5-mile ride. If somebody felt intimidated by that, we made it easy to cut back up to Tabernacle Baptist Church, and they could just do a 2.5-mile ride. Basically, let's see, we went and saw Historic Tabernacle Church. That's where we started. Went to Brown Chapel AME, and rode down through the original where they marched from Brown Chapel to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and wanted to highlight that. Once you get to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you cross over into the historic districts, where there's a lot of early 19th and late 19th century homes, great architecture throughout this area, and wanted to kind of connect the parks there. We have some parks on each side of the bridge that there's not really much connectivity. That there's a lot of activity in each park, but we wanted to kind of connect them through that historic district. So a good thing about Selma that we see is we have really wide streets. And so we see that as an easy way to implement some temporary bike lanes really soon, and hopefully get some regular bike lanes as we go. But we want to connect those historic sites to the parks. There's some trails down in the parks that have been made by some guerrilla mountain bikers, I guess, like myself. And we just kind of go through there and cut our way through the woods and down by the river. And now we've got some trails. So we're kind of trying to highlight those now, let everybody know there's somewhere to ride down along the creek and along the river. And then you come back up and through the historic sites and back over to Tabernacle. This picture here is of Tabernacle Baptist Church. It's a beautiful historical African-American church, where a lot of the meetings were held leading up to the Civil Rights March. They are very involved with the Conservation Fund on this effort to connect the civil rights sites, and they were gracious enough to let us use their parking lot. Here's a picture of I'm actually wearing a Cand-Aid shirt. They're a foundation out of Colorado that's been helping us, and they're sponsoring a mural trail through the Black Belt. This is Trey Taylor, an artist out of Birmingham. I think he's originally from Oregon. We're trying to connect some mural painting and some bike riding together. We do music events, so we're trying to connect that type stuff. Yeah, so connectivity, that's a good thing to look forward to.
Thank you so much, Clay, for giving us a run through of the event that you held earlier this year to really raise the visibility for the bike lanes, and also to really connect important historical areas throughout the town and create that experience for people to enjoy that. So appreciate it. We're going to move on to Elaine Price, and she's going to be sharing how in Cleveland they are engaging with mayors and residents through a series of events called Bike with the Mayor. Elaine, I'll pass it on to you.
Great, thanks so much, Heather, and thanks to everyone at Rails to Trails Conservancy for putting this on. I'm learning a lot from, and great to hear from the other speakers. So next slide, please. So my name is Elaine Price. I am with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, and I lead a collaboration called the Cuyahoga Greenway Partners. And this is where we are. We're the northeast corner, more or less, of Ohio, and Cleveland is our largest city in our county seat. Next slide, please. So back in late 2019, let me back up. In 2014, we formed a collaboration of the key agencies, such as our Metro Parks, our Metropolitan Planning Organization, City of Cleveland, our transit organization, even our sewer district, and several others, got together and we formed what we call the Cuyahoga Greenway Partners. And we said, let's all work together collaboratively to get more trails and bike facilities built in Cuyahoga County. And that resulted in NOACA, our MPO, funding a countywide trail and bikeway plan. So that was completed in 2019. Cuyahoga County is comprised of about 59 individual communities, about 1.25 million residents, and we're structured with 1 county executive and 11 county council members. We are a home rule state, though, so whatever happens at the municipality level. So those 59 communities are really critical. And actually, more than a year ago, we were presenting to giving an update on the Greenway plan to some of our mayors in the northwest corner of the county. And one of the things they said to us is, thank you so much for reminding us that we have a county-wide plan. It helps for our residents to know that that half-mile bike lane in our community or that 3/4 mile long trail in our community is not just a one-off, but it's part of a bigger network. How can we raise more resident awareness that we have a county-wide plan? So this year, we have a Mayors and Managers Association, which meets approximately once a month. And we were giving an update on the plan and some updates on some public engagement, elected official engagement sessions, which we ran last summer. And I was looking out over this crowd of mayors. Next slide, please. And I said, this year, let's do Bike with a Mayor. And I had about 7 or 8 mayors wave their hands at me and say, I want to be a part of this. And after a few more phone calls, we ended up with 10 communities, 10 mayors that all agreed to lead a Bike with a Mayor event. And so mostly on the Near East Side, but we are spread throughout the county. So next slide. So what are we trying to do here? The main purpose is raise awareness among citizens that we do have a county-wide plan. We also want to showcase any existing, particularly recently built trail and bike facilities that we have, but more importantly, future facilities for which we are trying to drive support and funding and engagement. It's also an opportunity for mayors to showcase any other projects that they have going on, maybe a new housing project or a mixed-use commercial development. And most importantly, to create dialogue between mayors and the residents so that the mayors and city council people and staff can hear from the residents about what they would like and what they would want. So that was January. February and March blew by, and we knew what was coming up in April, thanks to Rails to Trails Conservancy, is Celebrate Trails Day. The city of Cleveland, in partnership with Bike Cleveland, had decided to do a Celebrate Trails Day event and did it in partnership with our CEO of our Metro Park system and our county executive, who happens to be an avid cyclist. So we said, perfect. We have the mayor of Cleveland leading a Celebrate Trails event. We dropped Bike with a Mayor right into Celebrate Trails and made that the kickoff for our Bike with a Mayor event. We also invited all of the other mayors who were going to be hosting Bike with a Mayor events throughout the summer, and about 7 or 8 of them showed up at the Cleveland event. Next slide, please. So it was, thank you, Rails to Trails, for hosting Celebrate Trails. this initial one with Cleveland. You see that top picture on the left, we have Brian Zimmerman, who is the CEO of our Cleveland Metro Parks, our award-winning Cleveland Metro Parks network. In the middle is Justin Bibb, our relatively new mayor of the city of Cleveland. On the right is Chris Ronayne, our relatively new county executive for the county. We had 200 people show up for this event, 100 riders. We had the Cleveland mayor plus 6 other suburban mayors. And as I said, Chris and Brian, we also had a reporter from the Plain Dealer. Next slide, please. And part of then what gets featured. So again, this is on the left, we have Jacob Van Sickle, who runs our Bike Cleveland network, which is a huge support organization for this. And you see people riding along a trail called the Red Line Greenway. But there were a couple of different items that were featured. Just to name a few, the Red Line Greenway, the Lorraine Midway, which is a road on the west side of Cleveland that we're looking at putting a midway down the middle. And we have a bridge called the Detroit Superior Bridge, which has a lower deck that isn't being used for anything these days. And there's a big push to trying to turn that into a linear park. Next slide, please. So what do? We quickly pulled together some tools and some training. So I worked very closely with Bike Cleveland, and we put together a checklist, a how to do a slow roll manual. We did 2 virtual training sessions, one of which we actually recorded. Bike Cleveland led those. And we also got our public relations media people involved. We gave everyone a template for a press release, a sample waiver, social media tips, and even a checklist of photos that you should take during the Bike with a Mayor event. We also connected them to Slow Roll Cleveland and to some of the other bicycling groups to act as support for their rides. Next slide, please. So our Cuyahoga Greenway Partners group, there's actually 14 partners who are part of that. And we also have formed a casual group of our public relations and communications leaders, which we have 19 people. So every time one of our communities put together their social media posts, I then blasted links to those out to these communication leaders who then also reposted to amplify these. So we encourage the communities, hey, get this on your website, do social posts, get it in your newsletter, flyers, and any local newspapers and things like that. Next slide, please. And one of the reasons we also, put together a list of photos to take, we all know this. Mayors who are getting their photos taken with a bunch of citizens on bikes are going to have a great portfolio for their own purposes, and particularly their next reelection campaign. No secret there. That was, one of the motives behind this. So I just want to run through. We've done 5 of these so far, and I want to also highlight what they're highlighting. This is Shaker Heights, and in their ride, one of the key facilities that was highlighted was the Van Aken Road Diet. This is a boulevard with a rapid transit line going through the middle of it, 2 lanes in each direction. Literally 3 days before this ride, the city council had passed a road diet where they're going to take one vehicle lane out of each side to make it a bicycle facility. So that's going to be a big move for Shaker Heights. Next slide. University Heights, which is named because of the presence of John Carroll University, did a great ride, showcased some new development that they're doing, and they also are working on a connectivity plan. And then just for fun, they also featured the Joe Shuster House. And for those of you who follow comic books, Joe Shuster was one of the founders of Superman. So there's a little competition here because Schuster actually grew up in Cleveland, but then moved to University Heights. So they quickly grabbed that branding and are helping to promote that. Next slide, please. Newburgh Heights is a small, very industrial community. And we did a ride here, a short ride, and the mayor is not a bike rider, but she did get on a bike and rode around in this area. They're really featuring Harvard Road, which is a very heavily industrial, big semi-truck road. but it leads right down to our towpath, which is one of the major significant in the state trails that we have. So it was a big feature here to show people the proposed alternatives for a off-road trail to go along Harvard Avenue. Next slide, please. And then Mayor Kim Thomas up in Richmond Heights wants to do a connectivity plan for her community. They got rained on, but they went anyways. And so they really did some riding on some of their main streets, but also through some of their residential neighborhoods to show how they might want to start to connect some of the assets they have. Next slide, please. So here's our totals to date. We've done 5 of these. We've had over 203 participants, and you can look at some of the breakdown there. I did kind of create a spreadsheet of what is it that we wanted to track. So I'm asking each of the communities to get to me this information afterwards so that we can kind of see how we're doing. So pretty happy so far with what we're doing to date. Next slide. We already have some lessons learned in which we're communicating to the remaining 5. And actually, we'll probably have an additional 2 because as communities are hearing about this program, I've got more people reaching out and saying, hey, our mayor wants to do it as well. First is actually talk to the participants before and after and ask them to think about, hey, which parts of the facilities, the roads, the trails that we rode on, where did you feel safe and comfortable? And where did you feel less comfortable? That's really important because that drives huge support for putting in protected bike lanes and off-road trails. Another thing we're learning, some of our communities are actually scheduling their event to coincide with an existing festival that people are familiar with and plan on coming to. It's a great way to drive participation. And another is engage businesses, particularly through the human resources department, because employees like to use trails on their lunch hour to go for walks and rides and exercise. Businesses can use these facilities as a marketing tool to attract new employees. And there can also be some friendly competition between businesses as to who got the most number of participants out to participate in these events. Next slide. So that's what I wanted to share, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Before I move it on to questions with the panelists, I just wanted to remind everyone that there will be a short Q&A with at the end. So if you do have a question about anything that is being talked about today, feel free to use the Q&A function to submit your questions. So I did want to kick off our discussion with Nia. So how did you choose your particular event as the moment, and why was the moment critical to the trail?
So, some of the other people involved with the organization, we were kind of brainstorming on what we wanted to do. And as we were brainstorming, we came upon different places that did cyclovias. So it said a lot of different places, not a lot of different ways and spelled a lot of different ways, but ultimately, like, the core of it is a celebration of cycling. So traditionally you would, maybe block off miles in a city. They have one that's really popular, I think, in Brazil. And you would block off miles of road, and the only people that can be on the road at that time are cyclists. So, that's where it came from. And from that, I said, oh, this will be great to not only celebrate cycling during the springtime, but also a way to celebrate National Minority Health Month, which falls in April, and also celebrate the Trails Day. So there was a lot of things to celebrate. And we also wanted to bring awareness to Carroll Park and Gwynns Falls Trails, and its use for the residents within Baltimore.
Thanks, Nia. I also love how mindful you were about considering your audiences and the residents that you wanted to engage. You had bubbles for the little kids, the virtual bike rides for people maybe who were a little curious about doing biking, but didn't want to jump on to doing it, themselves. So that
Right.
support there,
Mhm.
that the whole process was truly so thoughtful. And it's a great reminder to us all about, revisiting who our audiences are and designing an event for them.
Right. And we also had with the kids, and there was a pump track there in the park. So for people who may, we had, the first year we had a whole BMX team there to show people how to use the pump track, and mountain bikers and all sorts of things. So within Carroll Park, we have a pump track. So that introduced kids and, people who didn't know that it was in the park. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nia. I'm going to move on to Clay. I have a question for you. So as you were talking about your event, I wanted to know, how was your event helping to revitalize the community? And what were you trying to achieve there? And what happened as a result? Oh, and then if you could unmute yourself too.
Thing, Mike. Promoting outdoor activities, engaging the community, highlighting tourist destinations, all those type things generally mean getting people in non-motorized traffic, so to speak, which means that they're going to spend more money, as what we usually see. And with the increased economic activity, increased revenues, all those things are cyclical. They generate more business, and hopefully, you eventually see some revitalization happening through those activities and collaborations with other organizations and businesses. So I guess our main goals were to advocate for bike lanes and multi-use trails. And that's something we've been working on for several years, really. And we kind of fell in a perfect storm here, where several organizations were interested in that at the same time, including the city government. And there's also the federal funds coming down. So hopefully through this event and more like it, and we can continue to advocate for it. And I think our long term, we'll get these trails and these bike lanes created in the city, and create that revitalization. And short term, I think we can just kind of work to build our advocacy group and our partners and our collaborators, and just kind of make sure that we have some similar goals in mind, and try to stay ahead of these things. And a lot of talk about having shovel-ready projects in government, and I think the best way to do that is engaging the community, making sure that we're doing what they want, and having people come together and building ideas together, so that we can all have the same end goals.
Thanks, Clay. I really love what you were saying there about, engaging the community early and often, and making sure that you're working together to make sure that any sort of bike lanes are really going to be useful to them, but also connect back to the important history, linking in with tourism opportunities as well, but also engagement within the community there. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Elaine, I had a question for you as well. I really appreciated you taking us through the very thoughtful process with the mayor initiative that's still ongoing this summer. And who we connect with and when is really fundamental, of course. But how did you determine the audience that you needed to engage to have the most impact?
It really came when some of the mayors I mentioned in the northwest part of the county when we were presenting to them over a year ago, said, how do we get our citizens to know that we have a county-wide plan? And that's when the light bulb really went off. They basically asked, can you help us get our citizens to know this? Because what was critical, and I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced it, is a leader in a community is trying to get a bike lane or a trail built in the community, and it's going through the planning commission, it's going through city council, and somebody shows up and says, why are we spending this money on this trail or bike lane? And it can appear to be some small little half-mile bike lane or 3/4 mile trail. But when that mayor, city council members can say, but this is part of a much bigger network, much more significant network, then it starts to have value that gets people excited. So it was the mayors asking us to get our citizens more involved. We also are targeting our state elected officials because we know that it's critical for them to be involved and to get the two of them together. And then we've also recognized that our county council members are people who we want actively engaged. They represent these citizens. And we don't have a funding source at this point in time from the county, but we are trying to raise that awareness to see if that will help, because the hardest funding to get is the engineering design funding. And it's kind of a gap, and we're hoping to start to inspire some thinking around that.
Thanks, Elaine. Yes, there's certainly a lot of funding opportunities available now. So really do hope that you're pursuing them. And of course, reach out to us if you need any help with funding recommendations. Our policy team can definitely help with that. We do have, I'm going to open it up to questions. So I know we have somebody who's super keen and has a question for us all. So I'm going to throw it out to you all. Whoever wants to jump in to answer can. Maybe we just popcorn it around. The question is, how are people incorporating trail etiquette into the programs? And they say that they've had the happy problem of busy rail trails, but would like to reduce user conflicts and have safe, welcoming atmosphere.
I guess I could jump in. And this just more so relates to high traffic trails on the day of whatever event you want to have. I would just say, contact, I know our main contact when we have a lot of things going on is typically our rec and parks department, to kind of let them know that the event is going on. And it might and a lot of times, if people know that it's going on, like if it's like a sign or something at the trailhead, or, you start to put advertisement out or that type of thing, I think that could be useful to let people know what's going on. And I know all the time on our bike rides, we're riding down the street and everybody's like, where are you all going? And then we're just like, join us. And then people start to follow, and then we're all together. So, you can think about those types of things.
I have a quick, go ahead, Clay.
No, you go ahead.
My agency doesn't manage trails, but I work closely with those who do. And we have a fabulous metro park system, and we have a national park system. And a lot of this is also integrated into the whole diversity, equity, inclusion movement that's happening right now. COVID got so many people out onto trails and bikeways, and people who were not necessarily, didn't have that as part of their personal history. So I know that there have been, through the park systems, ambassadors who are out on heavy times to talk to people about, hey, stay to the right, hey, announce yourself. There's been more materials that have been created that have been on websites, as well as this is a topic that we've integrated into our every other year Trail and Greenways conference. So those are a couple of ways we're trying to get the word out.
So here in Selma, we're a small town, and people do like to come before the council and kind of announce it publicly on record. That can be a good way. to get the word out. Social media, obviously, I mean, that's the lowest cost way, I think, to get the word out. There's sometimes in some cities there may be laws surrounding parades. So you may, when you do go to that city council meeting, you may just check the laws and make sure if you need to fill a form out, go to the police department, or for any special event or something like that. That's usually the first thing we do is go fill those forms out and make sure we've got all that covered.
Thanks all. I really appreciate all the varied different ways that you can get that information out. There's also information if you're looking to reshare. We have Share the Trail resources on Rails to Trails Conservancy's website. So if you are, don't have enough time and need to get something out quickly, you can refer to that, and hopefully that'll be some information to, like Clay said, get something out on social or maybe to your newsletter. One other question, I just to the group, what's your advice for someone interested in creating engagement to accelerate their trail network, but are really kind of feeling overwhelmed? Maybe they're juggling a lot of balls and they're really unsure where to start. What would you say to them?
Don't stop. just keep plugging away. I mean, eventually it'll all fall into place. Just don't give up. Somebody will jump on board that'll take on a task, or something may clear up as things progress, that leave you a little bit clearer on what direction you're going. So just don't give up.
I can totally agree with that one. Just push forward. Like a lot of times, we might overthink and think about all the obstacles that may come about. It's always through. I know one obstacle that I had a challenge with was permits. But that's a challenge, but it's not impossible. And just gaining that information and spreading your network and asking, the right questions could be useful. So, don't feel as if you have barriers. Just think of you having an opportunity to do something fun for your community, and that should push you forward.
And I would just add, form your team and divide and conquer. We created a checklist, which I'm happy to share. And when people start to look at these different tasks and say, oh, Joe can do that one, and Mary can do that one, and Mike can do that one, then all of a sudden what seems like overwhelming, oh my gosh, I have to do everything, isn't. Because first of all, you can see everything that needs to be done, and then you can divide up who's going to take it on, and you spread the work around. So understand your big picture, form your team, and get everybody to do a little piece of it.
Thank you. Those are really inspiring words from you all. And Elaine, it looks like people are interested in that checklist. So we'll make sure we can get that out to everyone following the call. There's another question that's popped through, and that is, what advice do you have for winning over policy and decision makers, elected officials, etc., who may be resistant to active transportation infrastructure?
Get a bunch of people who are in their district, go on a ride or a hike in a really uncomfortable area so that they can feel firsthand why that facility is needed. And then also connect them with people who either by choice or by financial restrictions don't have automobiles and need other than automobiles to get around.
That was a tricky question. I'm more so tackle this as, kind of getting around other like-minded individuals and making a stronger voice with many people instead of just one voice. So, getting with like-minded organizations, leading bike rides. And again, social media is a good thing too. I know a lot of times we connect with our Department of Transportation, and post about our rides, and they've reached out to us and different things, because ultimately, people that are higher up, like the mayor, they have a lot on their plates, but they have a lot of departments that are specific to these types of things. So I try to tackle it directly to the people that are doing the work.
Yeah, both good points. And you may just want to find out exactly what it is why they're against it. And just, it may just be because they're bullheaded, I don't but if not, maybe it's something that they're, not aware of. So some knowledge can help that. And maybe invite them, like Elaine said, invite them somewhere to participate in the event, and have a one-on-one conversation with them. Try to get to know them and feel more comfortable with you.
Thank you all for sharing your thoughts, your experience, your insight with all of us. The reminder to partner up, to educate, and to really highlight that experience is really important. I'm going to pass it on to Mary Ellen, but thank you all for your time. And Mary Ellen's going to wrap up for us.
And to see such a lively group going in the chat, working together to resolve, share best practices and resources. That is really the point of the TrailNation Collaborative. So we're thrilled to see that happening. And do hope that you will join us for our next webinar from Rails to Trails Conservancy, delivering on the potential of federal infrastructure investments. That's on July 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So in just a couple weeks. And in the interim, please feel free to read the engagement section of the playbook. I believe Yvonne just dropped that link in the chat. That is the newest section of the TrailNation playbook. So we encourage you to take a look at all of the great resources there. And as always, we will continue to add more to that as time goes. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good afternoon.